Nick Fuentes is one of the fastest growing political commentators in America. Since February of this year, he's gone from having 500,000 followers to now having over 1 million followers as of October. He's becoming normalized on the right and is being platformed by major Republican voices. The rapid rise of Nick Fuentes is very concerning because he is a genocidal neo-Nazi who supports mass murder. For some reason, there are a lot of people who deny that Nick Fuentes is a Nazi and they say, no, he's not pro-Hitler. Well, here's some evidence of Fuentes being pro-Hitler.
Hitler was a pedophile and kind of a pagan. It's like, well, he was also really fucking cool. So
Fuentes thinks that Hitler was really cool, even though during World War II, Nazi Germany under Adolf Hitler deliberately murdered 20 million civilians. The Nazis committed genocides and massacres in every European country that they violently invaded and occupied, and they had millions of innocent unarmed civilians shot to death, starved to death, or gassed to death as part of their genocidal campaign. Nick Fuentes also told Alex Jones that he admires Hitler.
Do you actually admire Adolf Hitler?
in some ways, yes.
So he admires the genocidal dictator who had tens of millions of civilians exterminated. Nick Fuentes openly believes that Hitler was a good leader.
Given your qualifications, would you thereby say that Hitler is a good leader?
It's indisputable he is. Indisputably. You could even say he's evil. He made Germany great again.
So he thinks that Hitler indisputably was a good leader despite massacring tens of millions of civilians and launching a war against an entire continent. He claims that Hitler made Germany great again when what Hitler did to Germany was that he banned all opposition parties, he ended elections, he imprisoned and executed Germans who opposed him, and he passed discriminatory laws against ethnic minorities in Germany, taking away their citizenship and all of their rights. He had 200,000 German civilians with mental and physical disabilities euthanized by force. And when he invaded the Soviet Union, he sent 4 million German men to go die in Russia for no reason at all, just because he wanted more land. So he caused the deaths of millions of German soldiers for no reason, and he caused the deaths of tens of millions of non-German civilians in Europe, and he took away everyone in Germany's rights. So he didn't make Germany great again, and he wasn't a good leader because all he was a genocidal, mass-murdering, imperialist, warmongering dictator. He said here that he told his parents that Hitler was awesome.
Second semester, I got home in the spring and I was like, Mom, Dad, Hitler was awesome. Hitler was right. And the Holocaust didn't happen.
So he thinks that the guy who committed genocide against millions of people was awesome and right. Here he refused to say that Hitler was bad.
Simple yes or no answer. Hitler, good guy, bad guy?
That's a tough. Well, there are no good and bad guys. They're just people.
But that's not true, dude.
It is true.
So if you had to check one box.
I'm going to say I'm neutral on that. I'm abstaining from
There's
that
no
one.
neutral.
So he's neutral on whether or not it is bad to start a war with an entire continent, invade and occupy several countries violently, and mass murder civilians through shooting and gassing and bombing and starving and burning. Like, all of that, there's nothing wrong with that. He's neutral on whether that's good or bad. It's fine to be a totalitarian dictator who tries to wipe certain ethnic groups off the map. Here he said that Hitler didn't go hard enough on Poland.
This dude, man, he didn't go hard enough against Poland. Let's just put it that way.
Now, if you don't know what Hitler did to Poland, he invaded Poland and violently wiped Poland off of the map for 5 years. It ceased to exist as a country because he tried to annex it into Germany. And the Nazis, they sent children like Czesława Kwoka, a Polish Catholic, and Nick Fuentes is a Catholic, so you should care about other Catholics, but he's clearly fine with the Nazi genocide against Polish Catholics. She was a Catholic girl who was taken to Auschwitz and was just murdered by the Nazis for no reason at all, just like thousands of other Polish children. The Nazis also deliberately burned many Polish cities and towns to the ground. The Nazis throughout the entire war went around burning and shooting Polish women and children to death. They also enslaved over 1 million Polish people, and in total, almost 3 million Polish civilians were deliberately murdered by the Nazis. So, despite all of that, Nick Fuentes thinks that the Nazis didn't go hard enough on Poland. And then he goes on to say later on here that the Polish people should actually forgive Hitler for his crimes.
Polish people. But look, Polish people have this bad habit of like hating Hitler, and we're gonna stop dissing the Nazis all the time, okay?
They have a bad habit of hating Hitler, the man who tried to wipe out all Polish people and had millions of them killed, millions of them enslaved, and shot and burned their women and children and abducted their children and flattened their cities. Like, he thinks Polish people should just forgive Hitler. They should just be fine with what he did. They shouldn't hold any anger or hatred against the man who tried to exterminate them.
But they got to get over. They got to let it go. Let it go. Forgive Hitler today.
They must just forgive Hitler. And here's the thing. Nick Fuentes doesn't even deny that the Nazis wanted to oppress and enslave Polish people. He does deny the Holocaust because he's historically illiterate, but he doesn't deny that the Nazis were violent and oppressive against the Polish people.
We're really going to pretend like Nazis weren't racist? They wanted to oppress Polish people. You think they were cool blacks? They wanted to enslave like Slavic people, but you think they're going to be like, but blacks are really commendable.
So he knows that the Nazis wanted to enslave and oppress Polish people and other Slavic people like the Russians and the Ukrainians.
Hitler hated light-skinned, blue-eyed Polish people and Slavic people, but he's like, black people? All right.
So he knows that the Nazis were racist against Slavic people and against Poles. But despite that, he wants Polish people to forgive Hitler. And despite that, he still shows so much praise and admiration and love for Hitler, despite being someone who tried to genocide Slavic people across Eastern Europe. Nick Fuentes has also said that he loves Kanye West's song titled Hail Hitler, which is a song praising Adolf Hitler and inciting genocide. Its main line is Hail Hitler.
My friend Ye put out the song Heil Hitler last week, and it's a great song.
He thinks it's a great song despite promoting Adolf Hitler.
My favorite song is Heil Hitler by Kanye West, by Ye.
His favorite song is the song that is praising and celebrating mass murder and genocide. Nick Fuentes also went on the Myron Gaines podcast and gave this whole rant about basically trying to justify all of Hitler's actions, saying he was a great heroic leader and all of his invasions were justified, and acting like he was the good guy basically of World War II. And last year, Fuentes made a tweet saying the United States defeated the wrong enemy in World War II. This just means that he wishes the Nazis had won World War II. He clearly believes that America should not have gone to war with the Nazis and should not have helped to defeat and destroy the Nazis. He's claiming that he's said multiple times that Hitler was actually preventing the Soviet Union from invading Europe and inflicting rape, famine, and genocide. It doesn't make sense to say that Hitler was trying to prevent the Soviets from invading Europe. Hitler was the one who invaded Europe. He invaded 10 countries within the span of 2 years, and he occupied half of Europe and carried out mass murder against civilians across Europe. Nazi Germany started invading Europe before the Soviets did. The Soviets only started invading European countries after the Nazis did. So to claim that he was trying to defend Europe, that Hitler was trying to defend Europe, when it was actually Hitler who was invading and occupying Europe and terrorizing Europe, and he's claiming that the Nazis were trying to prevent the Soviets from inflicting genocide and rape and famine on Europe. That's what the Nazis did to Europe. And the Soviets didn't attack the Germans, but Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union unprovoked. And then they occupied a huge portion of the Soviet Union, and they murdered more than 10 million civilians in the Soviet Union. They tried to exterminate all of the Jews and all of the Ukrainians and Russians in the Soviet Union. And then the Soviets pushed back and then occupied Eastern Germany. And then the Soviets committed war crimes across Eastern Europe, but they didn't murder anywhere near as many civilians in Eastern Europe that the Nazis did. The Nazis murdered 20 million civilians in the countries that they occupied during World War II, whereas the Soviets didn't murder anywhere near that many in the countries that they occupied during World War II. They did kill a lot, and as bad as the Soviets were, they weren't trying to exterminate entire races out of existence in Europe, whereas Hitler and the Nazis were trying to ethnically cleanse all Jewish people, all Romani people, all Polish people, all Russians and Ukrainians and Belarusians. He was trying to ethnically cleanse all of them out of Europe and inflicted genocide against these groups. And the Nazis raped millions of women in Russia. And the Nazis deliberately engineered a famine in the Soviet Union. It was called the Hunger Plan. They aimed to starve out tens of millions of Slavic people in the Soviet Union. They managed to starve 4 million civilians to death in the Soviet Union. So to pretend that the Nazis were trying to save Europe, they were trying to defend the Europeans from rape and famine and genocide, well, it was actually the Nazis doing that to Europe. How can you invade and occupy an entire continent and enslave its population and commit massacres and genocide and then say, no, we're trying to prevent those guys from doing it. We're protecting you guys from the Soviet invasion. Okay, but you, the Nazis, you're the ones doing the invasion right now. You're the ones doing the slavery and the genocide. But now you're saying that we're doing this to prevent the Soviets from doing it? Doesn't really make any sense. Now, there's a huge misconception in America where a lot of people believe that Nick Fuentes and other fascists are anti-war. Nick Fuentes isn't anti-war at all. He's very much pro-war and pro-imperialism. For one, he supports Adolf Hitler and he supports Nazi Germany, and he seems to think that what they did was justified. And the Nazis launched World War II, which was the biggest and deadliest war in human history. They invaded and occupied 10 countries in 2 years. They tried to conquer the continent. They tried to wipe entire countries out of existence, such as Poland. But Fuentes supports that, which means he is pro-war and pro-imperialism. The Nazis were the ones invading and invading and invading and launching enormous, deadly, violent wars against the entire continent. But another reason why we can see that Nick Fuentes is pro-war is that he supports the Russian invasion of Ukraine. In March 2022, right after the war broke out, Fuentes praised Tsar Putin for the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which he claimed was to liberate Ukraine from the evil empire in the world, which is the United States. So he thinks that Russia was liberating Ukraine from America, even though America wasn't oppressing or abusing Ukraine in any way. America wasn't killing anybody in Ukraine. But then when the Russian invasion of Ukraine began, Russia began bombing all of Ukraine's infrastructure and flattening all of the Ukrainian cities to rubble, and on a daily basis bombing Ukrainian women and children to death and rounding up Ukrainian civilians and having them executed, or imprisoning them, or raping them, or torturing them, taking away all of their rights, abducting their children, or forcibly deporting them to Russia. So all of these human rights violations against the Ukrainian civilians, and he thinks that that's liberation. During his speech, Fuentes praised Hitler and said that the media has been comparing Vladimir Putin to Hitler as if that wasn't a good thing. So he clearly thinks that Vladimir Putin and Hitler are both good. And Fuentes also asked his audience, can we get a round of applause for Russia? And this was followed by roaring applause and chants of Putin, Putin. So he thinks that Russian soldiers going in and shooting and raping and torturing Ukrainian civilians, he thinks that that deserves applause. He thinks that Russia deserves applause for flattening apartment buildings, bombing schools and hospitals, killing women and children on a daily basis. He thinks that deserves applause. And after the conference, Nick Fuentes led a prayer for Russia's soldiers in Ukraine, soldiers who are rapists and torturers and murderers. He thinks that they deserve a prayer. And he's also expressed support for a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, saying, I want China to take back Taiwan. I want Russia to take back Ukraine, if for no other reason than it's time for America to be humiliated. So just because he wants America to be humiliated, he thinks that Taiwan should be invaded and conquered and oppressed by the Chinese government. These Nazis claim to be anti-communism, but when it comes to China and Taiwan, they're perfectly fine with the Chinese Communist Party oppressing and abusing Taiwanese people, taking away all their rights, taking away their freedom of speech, taking away their elections, and probably imprisoning or executing any Taiwanese person who were to criticize the Chinese government. He's pro-invasion of Taiwan, which would result in probably tens of thousands of civilian deaths, and he's pro-Russia invading and occupying Ukraine. He's fine with all of that suffering and oppression and violence. He's pro-invasion, he's pro-war, because it makes America feel humiliated. So that gives you a good idea of where Nick Fuentes' moral compass is. He supports the Nazi invasion of all of Europe and the conquest, occupation, genocide, mass murder, slavery, all of that, all of those atrocities against Europe. He supports all that. He's pro-Nazi invasion. He's pro-Chinese invasion and oppression of Taiwan, and he's pro the Russian invasion and bombing of Ukraine. He supports all of those wars. He supports all that violence. He's not just okay with war, he is pro-war. He is pro-imperialism, and he is pro-mass murder and pro-genocide. Nick Fuentes openly admires Hitler. He thinks Hitler was cool, a great leader, refuses to say that Hitler was bad, and he thinks America shouldn't have fought and defeated the Nazis. Anyone who supports Hitler is someone who supports mass genocide against millions of innocent civilians. And anyone who supports Hitler is someone who supports eradicating certain ethnic groups out of existence. Make no mistake, when Fuentes says that he loves Hitler, it means that he loves genocide, he loves ethnic cleansing, he loves imperialism, and he loves war crimes. Nick Fuentes is openly pro-Hitler. He is a neo-Nazi, and every single person who supports Nick Fuentes is also a genocidal neo-Nazi. These people support massacring children. It's really terrible that a Hitler lover like Nick Fuentes has become so popular and so mainstream among right-wingers in America. People like Nick Fuentes should be demonized and ostracized by everyone in civilized society. They are literally pro-genocide, pro-war, pro-imperialism, and pro-mass murder.